"One return to Pit Lane," she says. It's the next stop, but it's a good 15 minutes if you walk it, and all of it uphill. God knows what she'd want to be going up there for, though. There's nothing there, is there? Then I remember, well, you see, I don't do this route often anymore. They did put a little hut there, selling teas and coffees, cheese toasties and the like. Maybe she's got a job there. They've tarted it all up now, see, this area, the pit and the hill that overlooks it. Now they've turned the old pit into a nature reserve and put up a few houses there. But people have always liked to go up on the hill and sit there in their cars looking at the view, even at night, especially at night. Before the nature reserve, the pit was just wild ground. People dumped their rubbish there. You know what they're like. It wasn't anything to look at then. But at night, of course, you couldn't see all that from the hill. You could just see the lights of all the cars and houses and buildings going out for miles in front of you. Well, that's why folk went up there when they were courting. They thought it were romantic. It was like you were looking out over a tapestry of twinkling stars. Dave at the depot said it were a dogging spot. Well, he'd know. It wasn't for me, that. Sitting in the car, I mean, not the other. Although I wouldn't go in for that kind of thing either. I've always been a bit shy in a crowd. I tend to go into myself a bit, you know. Oh, it's just that I spend enough time behind the wheel as it is, driving the bus. And what's that phrase they have for someone who does the same thing for fun that they do for the job? It escapes me now, my mind not being what it was. But you get the gist. Work to live, not the other way round. That was always my motto. Work to live. It's not always easy, though, is it? And God knows these past few years have been a bit difficult. And not just with the job either. And let me tell you, with the state of the roads these days, always bloody roadworks, town planners, they couldn't plan an orgy in a knocking shop. And that's before the bloody drivers you have to contend with. And the cyclists, don't get me started on them. And the passengers. Well, it's enough to send anyone over the edge. But no, you can cope with all that stuff, can't you? As long as everything else is just ticking along. I still remember my dad when I was young. He was a gentle soul, often extremely quiet. He only really spoke if he had something to say, you know. But he was strict. Oh, he knew his own mind. He could be very strict. I remember coming in from school once, trying it on a bit. You know how kids are, showing off, swearing and that. Well, gave me a right thick ear. And he said he wouldn't suffer any swearing at home because he had to put up with bad language and rough behaviour all day at work. Which, come to think of it, was a bit odd with him working up the library. But he were right. The home should be a refuge from all that, shouldn't it? The thing about me, I've always admired people who can put things into words and make it sound clever, you know. I'll never forget these signs they were selling at the garden centre. They said, "A house is made of bricks and beams, but a home is built of love and dreams." Isn't that lovely? We'd not only gone in for a bag of peat and some baby bio, but no, that was when it all started coming apart for me. When it started going downhill, you know, at home. Oh, we'd had a good run for our money, I suppose, June and me. Married 11 years. There's folk these days who'd call that a miracle. And the first 3 or 4 or 2, I'd say we were really fairly happy together. As happy as any couple. And after that, well, it never goes on like it does at the start, does it? You know, when you first start courting. I mean, you'd never get anything done, would you? And I'm not one to go into all the ins and outs. I think people make too much of it these days. But well, let's just say when we first started seeing each other, we had our moments, I can tell you. And I'm pleased to report that I didn't disgrace myself in that area, even with my problem. And June was always very good about that. But she did have, and this is by her own admission, so I'm not putting words in her mouth, she did have a very high libido. And I won't lie, that concerned me, even at the outset. But I suppose you always hope for the best, don't you? You have to. It was the day before the wedding, and like I say, my dad, he wasn't a very outspoken man, very softly spoken, or almost silent. But, well, he saw me crying and asked me what was wrong, and that's when I told him about my worries, and that's when he confided in me. And I'm not betraying his trust because he died 4 years ago, and Mum died suddenly of a broken heart 2 years later. He told me that it had been the same with him and my mum. She was oversexed, was how he put it. Not that I ever saw that side of her. Well, how would I? But he admitted, he said, they'd had their ups and downs. It hadn't always been plain sailing. There'd been a few bumps in the road, but at the end of the day, you take the rough with the smooth in a marriage, don't you? Happy wife, happy life, was how he put it. And well, he kept his cards close to his chest, my old man, as you know, but you can tell he had a way with words when he did speak. I think it was being around all those books. Anyway, I hadn't even started on the buses when June and I first got together. I was working for the council at the town hall. That was where we met, you see. She was in births, deaths and marriages, and I was doing data input for what they called free school meals, although they also did clothing grants. I'd always been into computing and word processing and the like, so it suited me well enough, and I were a dab hand at it. And you know the way these things start. I would see this girl, this woman, around the place, a vision of loveliness she were. Flaming red hair like Rula Lenska or a young Anne Robinson. Out of a bottle, you know, but it did catch the eye. And I suppose she probably caught me looking once or twice and smiled back. And for a time we'd smile whenever we saw each other. And then it'd be hello in the corridor, just passing, being friendly like. Then a bit after that, stop and have a chat and a bit of a giggle over something. And then one day, it all feels a bit silly now, like we were still at school or something. She stuck a post-it note on my desk, asking if I'd take her to dinner. She only meant the staff canteen, you know, because, well, it was subsidised, and no one minded if you took the full hour, as long as you worked later to make your time up. So that's what we did. And I must have looked like the cat that got the cream, because, as I say, she was a looker. All the fellas said so. And out of all of them, she'd chosen me. Oh, she was exotic. She introduced me to Masaka. But she was lovely at the start, you know, she really was. Charming, vivacious, funny. She had the filthiest laugh. And easy to get along with. No airs and graces, not like some women. Anyway, that was the start of it. And before long, I'd moved in with her at this place she were renting. And then, you know how it goes. People start asking you, when are you going to pop the question, Malcolm? You've been together a while, when are you going to make an honest woman of her? But truth be told, we'd never really talked about it. We were happy as we were. At least I thought we were. I don't know now, of course. But I suppose it might have come a bit sooner than it did, what with her working in that department. Well, it would have given us a head start after all, knowing what forms we needed and all that. So at any rate, people kept going on about it, and I think we felt pressured into, tying the knots, as it were. And, well, you know how expensive it can be. The certificate, the point of it, that's the cheapest bit. But everything else soon mounts up. You should have seen what they wanted to charge me for a hot and cold buffet at the Fighting Cocks. Quadrupled the price when they realised it were for a wedding. I told them where they could shove their bloody rainbow coleslaw. It's not like we were both big earners, after all. And then there was buying the house. Well, stressful, and doesn't begin to cover it. Well, let's just say it was a lot, all at once. And after that came the first of our bumps in the road. I was still at the council, and I'd worked my way up to supervisor. So now I was having to check other people's data inputting as well as my own, which would have been fine if they hadn't gone and brought in that bloody stupid new computer system, which never worked. I don't care what anyone says. But it wasn't fit for purpose. Everything took 3 times as long to do, and, well, they sent a chap over from the company to give me some more training, smarmy little prat he was, and even he said that the system had some idiosyncrasies, or whatever it was he called them. Anyway, the long and the short of it was that I fell behind with my data inputting. A long way behind. I mean, it was embarrassing. So I started putting all the forms I didn't get done each day in my desk drawer, so no one could see how far behind I'd got. I always meant to get back round to them, when there were more time. But of course there never was, with the new stuff coming in every day. Around this time, I remember, was when me and June were trying for a baby. Well, things at work came to a head. People had been ringing up about the claims not going through, but we just blamed it on the Royal Mail, stuff going missing in the post. Well, it does happen, you hear about it. But then there was to be this big office move around, see. They wanted to change everything round and bring in these fancy new desks in and get shot of the old ones, and they wanted to do it all over the long bank holiday weekend when the staff were at home, and some of us would come in and help with the move, for which they'd get double time. Anyway, by now, all 4 of my desk drawers were full of these sodding forms, stuffed full of them they were. So I brought in my big hold-all into work one day, thinking I could take them home for a bit, bring them back after the move. Although, to be honest, I wish I'd just burnt the lot. See, it was only the following week, when I was getting them out of the bag, back into the drawer, that Colin Asquith, that nosy little pillock, clocked me with all the forms in my bag and went scurrying off to tell his manager. As you can imagine, they made a great bloody fuss about it. You know what firms are like. You've breached this thing and that thing. And of course, June was very upset. Well, everyone was acting like they'd never dropped a bollock at work the way they were carrying on. Even June, who certainly wasn't above stealing a few rolls of sellotape come Christmas, or a jiffy bag if she needed one, but no, butter wouldn't melt our June. Looking back, I think they just wanted rid of me, and this was a good excuse. And somehow my face didn't fit. You know what the council's like. They wanted more women in. But no, I was disappointed in myself. Disappointed that I'd disappointed June. And then, of course, I was out of work for a good long bit. And that put pressure on us. On her, with only one wage coming in. When you've been in a job for a while, it's hard to see yourself doing anything else, isn't it? I'd been doing the data inputting, which I was good at, and I'd hoped I could find something else in that line, But it was like all the data inputting work was drying up all of a sudden, like there were no more data coming in, which I had to explain to June on more than one occasion when she were getting on at me. Any road up. That's how I ended up on the buses. Well, June had heard on the radio that Fairdeal, the local bus company, they were looking for new bus drivers. No experience necessary, as long as you could drive, and you started earning as soon as you started the training, which was a plus. She said it was the ideal job for me. She said she didn't think they were that fussy because she knew someone whose uncle had served time for indecent exposure and they took him on. I must have looked a bit hurt at that, because she changed tack then and said she thought I'd look sexy in uniform. Well, it pains me to say it. She were right. Oh, not the uniform, although she did ask me to wear it once or twice to put her in the mood. But about being a bus driver. I took to it like a duck to water. Well, some people think it must be pretty boring driving up and down the same roads every day, seeing a lot of the same folk day in and day out. And yes, I'll give it to you, you have to be a certain kind of person. But like I said to June, it's a full-on job, is bus driving. A lot of folk couldn't do it. Well, think about it. You have to be good at handling money, quick at reckoning change. You have to be good with people, calm in a crisis. You need navigation skills, especially with them changing the bloody roads all the time. No, it's a good job. And you could always have a good laugh with the lads down at the depot, and a bit of a giggle with the girls in the office too. Oh, that's changed a lot now, of course, with women's lib and what have you. And now I think back on it, they were the good years. You don't know at the time, do you? It's only when you look back you realise that was when you were happy. Me and June were getting on all right. I was pulling in extra shifts. The money wasn't bad. I mean, I weren't Richard Branston or anything, but we could manage a foreign holiday a year. It were sad I couldn't have children. That might have changed things. But we had each other. Bricks and beams and all that. And the job was going well. Oh, I were one of their best drivers, they told me so. I even won an award. Bus Driver of the Year. 1992, that were. The last year they had it. It was just a nice thing Fairdeal did. We had to go to an award ceremony. Black tie, 3 courses, the whole shebang. I rented a tux just for the occasion. June treated herself to a posh frock. We had a photo taken with some of the higher-ups. Me holding the trophy. I looked a bit red in the face. June said I looked like a tomato. Cheeky bitch. We'd both had a bit too much to drink. Champagne, mind. Not your bloody supermarket plonk. That was the high point for me. It felt like I'd made it, like I'd found my calling. Oh, there was even a thing about it in the local paper, using the photo of me with the trophy, saying how I'd won it for being a valued, trusted pillar in the community and all that. Which were nice. You want to think you've made your mark, don't you? On life, I mean. That you've got a legacy. That folk who'll remember you for something you've done. I showed my dad the picture in the paper and, well, he wasn't a talker. In fact, he was almost mute at the end. A look in his eye, I could just tell, But life, somehow, it seems to have a way of knocking you off your perch and dragging you back down, hasn't it? Well, first there was all that business with the takeover. Fairdeal, got bought by some German company. Colt Efficients, they were called. Imagine that. Bloody Germans. What would they know about running a bus company in Britain? They drive on the wrong side of the road for a start, the daft buggers. And anyway, it were all bloody wrong, right from the start. And people got sacked left, right and centre. No one was safe. Even me, bloody Bus Driver of the Year. You didn't know where the axe might fall. It were a very tense period, that were. And then all the new rules and changes they wanted to bring in. Well, you know how it is. New broom and all that. One of the first things was we stopped giving out change. The passengers had to give you the exact fare to ride, or they could overpay, but there was to be no change given. Time-saving measure, they said. But you know what it was really about, don't you? Well, next thing they said they wanted to crack down on people not paying full fare, said they were losing money, even accused some of us drivers of being on the take, put bloody cameras in all the cabs to keep an eye on us. If Churchill had been alive to see it, he'd have rolled in his grave. I said to June, I don't know if I can stick this. But we'd taken out another loan, for the conservatory, and so I had to keep working. There were no avoiding it. She said, at any rate, she couldn't do with having me around the house all day again. What I'm trying to say is it was a stressful time, all things considered. There were always bills to pay. Some months my wages would go in the bank and back out the same day. So I was taking on a lot of extra shifts and any overtime going just to keep my head above water. You know what it's like. Well, maybe I did start leaning a bit too much on, the drinking. It was just, I couldn't keep from thinking that June were going off me a bit. The bloody conservatory. You see, I decided to get a self-build to save money, and she were forever going on about it. Well, work on it had stalled, so to speak. It'll be grand when it's finished, I said. I just need a free weekend or two to have a really good bash at it. Oh, it's been going on for months, she said. Excuses, excuses. I'm tired. There's a screw missing. Me back's playing up. I knew I should have got a man in, she said. I should have known you wouldn't be able to get it up. I wondered if we were still talking about the conservatory. Anyway, you'll think it were daft of me, asking Dave from the depot to come over and finish the job. Dave, with his bloody Stanley tool bag over his shoulder and his drill driver set, strutting about with his top off on account of it being a hot August bank holiday, and him having not long come back from a fortnight in Lanzarote. And of course, if you ask me, a true Englishman doesn't go that colour in the sun, but, well, she were happy at least. She'd got a conservatory at last. She looked like the proverbial cat. "Your mate Dave's so handy," she said. "I've told him I've got plenty of other things he can look at. He said if I want, he'll come and felt the shed roof next." Oh, I'm not bloody stupid. I know what you're thinking. You'll think I was asking for trouble, especially with how things were between June and me. But I never thought. I was tired, see. Not hungover, you understand, but I'd been sleeping poorly, and that previous night I'd slept very poorly. And I had to say I felt sick and could have finished my shift early. So I came home, thinking June would be at work and the house would be empty, just so I could get my head down for a bit before she got back. And that's when I found out. There was his coat hanging on the baluster, and his shoes by the door next to his tool bag. I thought maybe he left one of his drill bits or something last time he was over and he's popped in to pick it up. And then I heard him up the stairs, giggling and making noises. You know how folk carry on. I don't know why, I started going upstairs, had my foot on the bottom steps, but then I stopped. I stopped because, how can I put it? I felt like I was about to be the punchline to a dirty joke. A man walks in on his wife and, well, if I didn't go up those stairs, well, there wasn't a joke, was there? Of course, later, much later, it all came out in the wash. There'd been others. But at the time I thought least said soonest mended. I never raised it with her. I thought if anything was going to drive her away it'd be that. And I thought life without June it wouldn't be worth it. So there never was any big scene, no fireworks, no tears. I was saddened by it. I were upset, I were bloody upset. But I'm a bit like my dad in that respect. Slow to anger, you know. Which I know is part of the problem, because it's all there, simmering away, bubbling under the surface. And not so it was with June and me. We weren't getting along, but we weren't not getting along. But as the time wore on, you could just feel it. This resentment, this rot eating away at us, at the foundations. That anger that's inside. It has to come out one way or other, doesn't it? Oh, 4 years ago it were. I was doing the night bus, Friday night, and I know it shouldn't have, but seeing all the folk bustling in and out of the pubs and clubs, laughing and carrying on, pissed, most of them, all the youngsters acting daft, the old ones not much better, couples in love going by arm in arm, well, it kind of grated on me a bit. And of course, when they've got a drink in them, they can be a bit leery on the bus, so you're always on your guard. Well, anyway, I was at the stop in the market square, about to pull away, when I see these 3 girls come running up, dressed up like dogs' dinners, none of them much over 18, if that. And one of them's holding her shoes in her hand, so she can run faster. And well, the Germans, they were sticklers for keeping us to the timetable. Well, you know what they always said about Hitler. So I was well within my rights to drive off and make them wait the 40 minutes for the next one. But anyway, she clambers on, the first one, heavy lass she were, wheezing, out of breath, followed by her 2 mates, all of them legless. And then I see, in the wing mirror, there's another one coming, tottering along on stilettos that she can't walk in, swaying from side to side, pissed as a fart. I've already closed the doors, so she has to knock. "How much is it?" she says. £1.40, I tell her. She makes a face, makes a show of going through her purse. "I've only got a tenner," she says, waving it at me. I point to the sign. It says no change given. Oh, she says, going back through her purse, frowning all the while. Well, if you hadn't spent it all on cocktails, love, I said. Now at this point, I'm running late, and I can hear the passengers behind me tutting and moaning while she's standing there counting out bloody 1p's and 2p's. Honestly, if you could have seen her, though, she had enough slap on her face to paint the Forth Bridge, and she's standing there, wearing next to nothing in the middle of winter, silly little strappy thing that barely covers her. Just another stupid tart, I thought, like all the rest. And she's looking at me with this hopeless, pleading expression on her face, her hands shaking. With the cold, I suppose. Bloody hurry up, for God's sake, I said. And that's when she dropped it. Her purse and all the coins, they went everywhere. Some of them rolled into the gutter, down the drain, and she dropped to her hands and knees, trying to pick them all up with her frozen fingers. I saw that £10 note go skimming along the pavement, blown by the wind. Oh, bugger this, you'll have to find your own way home, I said. And I closed the door and started driving off. You've got to remember, I'd been driving for years. You get used to folk trying to get a free ride, taking advantage of your better nature. And anyway, how could I have known what would happen? I can still see her, the view of her in the mirror, crouched on the pavement, desperately scrabbling for those coins, watching me pull away. Little black rings round her eyes she had, where her mascara had run. Her face white. Red hair. Well, after about 10 minutes or so, her mates came down, started shouting at me, swearing and carrying on, saying I shouldn't have left her, and that's when I reminded them that they'd left her. But if they were going to keep abusing me, they were welcome to get off and walk, which they did do. But they didn't catch up with her. They missed each other somehow. Maybe if they had. Look, I couldn't have known, could I? But it didn't help. You know, with the guilt. When they eventually found her, when I read about what they'd done to her, how she'd been used the way she had. Used, and well, it made me feel sick. Sick to my stomach. It wasn't my fault. I'd just been following the rules, hadn't I? Doing my job. I was only obeying orders, as given to me by mine Führers at cult officiants. You couldn't really blame me for it. For what those animals did. But of course, folk did blame me. You know how they are. When she were reported missing, they kept showing this CCTV footage on the news, of me turning the girl away, stopping her from boarding the bus. It were on the TV, in the papers, painting me in a really bad light. Then, when she'd been found, they kept on showing it, over and over, saying how it could have been different, how she could have been saved, how if she'd only been allowed on the bus, she wouldn't be dead. 15 she were. No age, is it? It was about the same time Dad had really got a lot worse. The cancer had taken part of his tongue, but he could still communicate with some difficulty. I'll never forget his last words to me. He said, "I see you are in the newspaper again." I can't blame June, really. Not completely. It can't have been easy living with me. Not with everything what went on. For a start, I had to take a lot of time off work, which, of course, interfered with her plans. And we fell behind with payments on a few things. And, well, you know what these banks are like about money they say you owe 'em. And then Mum went, and let me tell you, dying's not cheap. When they know it's a funeral, the price of everything just shoots up. So, there was all that to deal with. And then, one day, well, yesterday, June came to me with an ultimatum. She said, "Malcolm, I can't go on like this. It's me or the bottle." Which made me laugh. In fact, it was the best laugh I've had in ages. As if I would ever have chosen that faithless bitch. Still, 4 years ago, today. They eased me back into the job gradually. They were very good about it. They have to treat their staff a bit better these days, the firms do. It's not all on their terms anymore, and I'm all for that. I had to have someone go round with me for a spell, just while I got back into the swing of things. But I know what to do now, where I'm going. Hello, she says, snapping me back to the present. "Ah, right, of course, Pit Lane," I say. Pit Lane. They've tarted it up now, the pit. Made it a nature reserve. Put houses next to it. I wonder what they're built of. But it were a dumping ground once, that were full of rubbish. Takeaway boxes, rusty tin cans, even old tumble dryers and sofas got dumped there. The buggers could have driven another mile up the road and taken it to the tip. But you know what people are like. They found that girl's body down there too. Broken, ruined, discarded, thrown away, thrown from the top of Pit Lane, like she were just an old mattress or summit. But then again, we all go there in the end, don't we? Into the pit. Rubbish on top of rubbish. £1.80, love, I tell her. She goes through her purse, frowning. "Oh, it's gone up, has it?" she says. "I might be a few pence short by the looks of it." She gives me a pretty smile, trying it on, like they all do. I smile back. "Go on," I say, "you're all right." The machine spits out a ticket, which she takes. For a moment she pauses and looks down the aisle to the back of the bus, and I turn and see what she sees. They all seem a bit on edge, a bit rattled. One chap's using a tissue to wipe spilt coffee off his tie. There's a baby crying. I've been taking corners too fast and braking a bit too hard, I know. I should take it easier. It's just, well, at some point they're going to start to wonder why June's not at work today. She looks at me, then at the slip of paper in her hand. I asked for a return ticket," she says. "Don't worry," I say. "You won't need it." And the doors hiss shut. You have been listening to The Bus Driver's Fear of Change, written and performed by Jasper L'Estrange. Well, I do hope you enjoyed it, and until next time, sweet dreams.